Thank you for tuning in to our third episode of Sensible Dissent, powered by Razzle Cannabis Broadcasting Network, starring yours truly, Nichole West, and my very favorite first-generation stoner, Sara Daniel. On today's episode, we were fortunate enough to have the owner of Blaqstar Farms, a Los Angeles-based social equity, cannabis cultivation-forward micro-business, Bryant Mitchell, with us to drop some insider industry knowledge. We will talk about all of the things going on in the current California attempt at reparations due to the racist war on drugs, and how currently drugs are still winning the war on drugs. But first, some commercials so that we can make sure that we can afford to still do this.
Medicus LP was created after their team discovered that very few avenues existed for investment in professionally managed public equity funds. As a result, they created a long-biased limited partnership, Medicus, for accredited individuals and organizations that will invest in public exchange-traded companies in the cannabis space. Investor net asset values are calculated on a monthly basis by their administrator, Klein Fund Services, and audited annually by Spicer Jeffries. This provides full transparency for investors. Their prime broker is BTIG and custodian is Pershing. Medicus started investing in January 2020. To learn more about Medicus, please visit their website at medicuslp.com. And for more information about their current investment opportunity, please visit the Razzle investment marketplace at razzle.com.
Welcome back, and thanks again for tuning in. I'm here with the founder and CEO of Blaqstar, Bryant Mitchell. He has over 10 years of hands-on management experience in the cannabis industry. In 2013, he established Blaqstar Farms after owning a Los Angeles dispensary where he realized the need for consistent, clean medical cannabis. Having learned the outdoor craft while working in Sonoma with the guidance from growers with decades of experience, Bryant built the foundation for clean, high-quality medical cannabis. He has an MBA from the University of Chicago Booth School of Business and a BA in business from Prairie View A&M University. I'm actually pretty impressed with your degrees, Bryant. He's also currently sits as an active board member of NDICA, the National Diversity and Inclusion for Cannabis Alliance, and holds an associate member of CMA, the Cannabis Minority Alliance. And I have to say, there are so many things happening right now in the way of diversity being a focus. I have to say thank you for putting yourself out there in a way that not only is pushing the movement forward and the agenda forward, but you're also making it for the whole industry. I've got a question for Bryant just to kind of get this started. And my first question really is, what would you say is the current most vulnerable situation for people in cannabis from your point of view, from your expertise?
Well, I would say that there's a misalignment. There's no alignment, right, across the state. As a social equity candidate, things have been initiated at the city level, right, and without the foundation of affirmative action, which the state of California dismissed some time ago, there's no teeth behind it, right? There's no every city gets to do their own thing. They get to approach it their own way. There's no governing body that lines everything up, and the social equity candidates are effectively out to fend for themselves. Right. Without the initiative, without us pushing this initiative in a lot of ways, it doesn't get done. And that's not happening at every level of, or every city in the state. It's not happening there. Right. And we don't have the bandwidth or the power to go out there and push this initiative at each individual municipality. And at the same time, it's left on the people that you're trying to say have socially been, done wrong. But then you're saying, I want you to pick up the baton socially that we took from you during the war on drugs.
And how are they going to financially ever support that effort? When you're dealing with age-old issues as well as regulations that are really suppressing people's ability to get there. And, anybody who's gone through any sort of legal system realizes that lawyers are probably the most expensive people in the world. And, you need a squad of them.
When you talk about quality, you give someone a license. And that doesn't mean it's a ticket to success, right? It's you're lacking funding, you're lacking the resources, you're lacking the experience, right? All those things play in a part. And social equity was meant to allow someone that hadn't been around or hadn't had the chance or the resources to stand at the same level that someone that has been there. Ideally, they help them, they work with them, they get the opportunity to work together and progress things forward. When the system is broken, the social equity candidates are kind of laid out to dry and be taken advantage of.
So ultimately, the opportunity leaves them vulnerable.
That's right.
The opportunity that,
It makes them wide open.
I've been kind of making a joke about it, but it's not really that funny because it's true. And maybe it is funny because it's true. Most comedy is funny because it's true, But this was almost like a predatory gifting situation where, it reminds me a lot of loans in, 2007, 2008, where people were getting these loans that they had no ability to sustain and no ability to be able to keep. And we were being kind of fed these lies of like, oh, refinance, oh, this, oh, that. Yeah. And I feel like to a certain extent, social equity candidates, people that actually could qualify for it, are being told we're going to sell for millions of dollars. We're going to become these wealthy people in this opportunity.
Yes.
And anybody who's run a cannabis business can tell you first and foremost that you're going to spend a whole lot more money than you're going to make to get started.
That's every business, right?
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely.
So why do we expect something different from this?
Absolutely. And why would we expect for that to be any different, to be able to overturn this business in 2 years? I'm going to sell it for millions of dollars. And I mean,
well, you can't even sell it if you're in the social equity program, right?
Oh, right. I mean, that's another, the way the program in Los Angeles was built, and city by city, county by county, they kind of have different regulations, which, we're going to get into a little bit more, but I really want to say thank you for that bit of insight on vulnerabilities. And I have to say you are wise beyond your years, Bryant. I feel like getting worn into the ground by the cannabis industry teaches us, 3 years for everyone, or maybe it's like cat years, like 7 to 1 or something. But you know what? Speaking of insight, Sara has some stuff that she'd like to share with us today on how the alignment of the planets and stars might actually have something to do with all of this. So, Sara, let us know what's going on in the world.
Awesome. Thank you. So this weekend, Uranus goes retrograde, and as with any retrograde, you really want to just slow down and observe. And Uranus is known for abrupt change and, disrupting the status quo, which there's a lot of going on right now. And 2020 has already been a year where, people say, like, the veil has been lifted, and it seems to be just beginning. So retrogrades are more about the internal as opposed to the external. So I suggest we draw our focus to our own individual goals and journeys at this time. And most importantly, remember to go with the flow and not get too attached to anything really, because who the fuck really knows what's going on right now?
Indeed.
Really, who does know? Who knows what is going on right now? But I'm going to kind of circle that back. The main bill that we're discussing today and my dumb law, which, in reality, it wouldn't have actually, it's not a dumb law. It's a genuinely great intended law. Senate Bill 1294, which is the California Cannabis Equity Act of 2018. This bill enacted California Equity Act, which would authorize the BCC, upon request by local jurisdiction, to provide technical assistance as defined to a local equity program that helps local equity applicants or the local equity licenses. So there was millions of dollars that was allocated. I want to say it was like $30 million that was allocated to the state of California. And they had until sometime last year, I would say it was like September or July of 2019, right, to apply for said monies. This bill was supposed to give monies to the local jurisdictions so that they could, create incubation programs or help people with basic business expenses, which I think would have been really great, except the monies are just being released and the deadlines for your businesses are passing and or coming up in the next hours, days, or months.
Correct.
Right? So the money still in the ether, right? Has not been dished out.
Correct.
Like you have not gotten any of said monies, right? You have 3 social equity licenses, correct? Okay, 3. Have you gotten any of this state funding trickled down to you at all?
No.
Okay. So, and we're months away from having to get through your final licensing process, correct? Where by the end of this year, Los Angeles is giving us a little bit of leeway.
They did extend it because a lot of us weren't ready by July 3rd.
Okay.
And so they did extend that time. I can't remember which the extension because I actually got everything done. I rushed
Right.
to try to get it done.
You finished it because
And,
you
you
thought
know,
that we were on a deadline.
Exactly. And then that deadline was changed a couple of days later.
It's
So,
very similar to the packaging deadline. That one was funny when like
They
they
always
made the
moving.
law where they were like everything has to be child proof, child resistant, and then like everyone in the small business world made their efforts to get it all fixed, and we bought all these new jars and we transferred everything and we sold through all the old shit and we spent all this money, and then like 7 days before the law was supposed to change, they were like, "Psych, you get another 6 months."
And you prioritize your spending based on these, dates given to you. And then next thing you know, it's like, well, I definitely could, as a small business and a minority owner, I definitely could have used that money.
You could have used that money to
know?
wait, to prolong that process, to, not have to pay the expedited fees, to not have to beg a contractor to come down to your
During the
facility
COVID.
in the middle of coronavirus.
Yes.
I mean, astonishing the things that they're expecting you to do, and then they're telling you, "Oh, well, we've got all this money." And it's like, well, no, you don't. The money exists in the ether. And I'm sure, the government bodies are going to get their office supplies before we ever fucking see a dollar of it. And the intention was great. And then it strangles the local people trying to do their thing too. The cat packers of the state, those people are, getting blamed for it essentially. And shout out to Cat for getting blamed for everything. I'm sorry that they keep blaming you for everything. This is we were destined for some sort of failure, and they just needed to put somebody there. So, like, in my heart of hearts, I sometimes feel sad for Cat.
No, I mean,
because the system was set faulty, and then they just keep pointing and pointing and pointing, and this happens at every local government level, but the state. The state didn't set us up for success. It really, really didn't. Currently, less than 10 of the current social equity licenses that were issued out the last round are actually owned by black men or women.
Right.
And let's not go into the fact, and I can go on a whole high horse about the fact that being a woman had nothing to do with our ability to get advantage, and why wouldn't we offer some sort of merit-based program rather than this first come first serve? We created a mob mentality. We created people that were ready to trample over each other to get to that next thing. They weren't trying to perform the best. They were trying to get there first, which is crazy. Sure. And I mean, there's cities around the state that still don't even allow for cannabis felons to work in the city. Like, there's still cities that have regulations.
Which is a huge problem. I mean, and I, as you said, in their defense with the DCR, I mean, they've been tasked with something that was a novel idea, great in theory.
Los Angeles is a country.
And it's a big movement, right, to get something like this done. And so you gotta, you do give it to them for trying their best with the limited resources they have, right? And like you said, their hands are, they've got one hand out or one finger out and everything else tied behind their back with the state not providing the necessary aid. At the same time, I will say it does fall on us social equity candidates in cities like LA to keep pushing forward, right? We do have the power. We need to exude that power and come together as one, right? And this is all the more reason now for us to be social about our equity, right? Stand together. Let's work together. Pool all, as you just said, there's only 10 of us possibly, right?
Crazy, right?
So why don't all 10 of us work together, right? That should not even be a question at this point, right? The market's too big for us not to come together and work together like other groups are working together.
Well,
right?
how sad is it? And it's typical of any situation where the government sets us up to fight against each other. Correct. Essentially. And so the infighting amongst the social equity applicants, amongst the cannabis business license holders in general, has been so tragic and so staggering that, like, it stops the progression.
That's right.
People are too busy fighting. And I mean, that's the same thing that's currently happening in our political climate as we speak worldwide. Like, cannabis, you're not alone. Like, this is a worldwide problem.
That's correct.
Is we are essentially fighting for the scraps against each other, against the ultra wealthy and the government that controls us, and the powers that be. But that kind of leads me to my last question for you, which is, what are your opinions on the current state of social equity? Like, what do you think it would take to create some sort of like an actual equitable system? Like, because everyone keeps having this conversation of I'm pissed off, I'm mad, and our whole purpose of the show, like, we're all about being pissed off, but we're about making a difference. Our the slogan that we've got is, finding that balance between being pissed off and making a difference. And so, sure, we're mad. Sure, this is completely fucked up, but what do we do? Like, if we were like going to write a list of like, here's what I need from, let's say, on a state level, what do you think needs to change on a state level to make a social equity situation actually make sense in California, where businesses like yours and others will be able to succeed and actually get some sort of reparation for the racist war on drugs that the country has been, facing, and drugs have just been kicking our ass.
Yeah, no, they have. And, I think it starts with the state by saying, just like the rules and ordinances that we have to follow for compliance, there's a baseline, right? At the very least, you have to be, 800 feet away from the next place.
Right.
That's a state regulation. It establishes a floor. There's no floor established by the state right now for social equity. Yeah. That's the first thing that has to happen. At the end of the day, if every city can determine how they go about it, some might look at lessons learned from others, where someone may go on about how they do it for their own benefit in their city. And so it has to be a baseline established by the state. I think that's where it starts, The
baseline, just like you said, city by city, it's so different. And that's the part that becomes really confusing, because I read through the bill, and the first few paragraphs, literally the first few paragraphs of the bill go through, and they're like, upon the finding that we realized the war on drugs was racist as fuck, and like, I don't remember, I'm paraphrasing. That's not what the law actually said. But basically, the first few paragraphs is like, hey, by the way, America, you racist. Drugs are how we've done that, one of the ways, and we realize that, and so we want to give back, and so we're creating this opportunity that's very vague and open for potential. For anybody who wants to beg for some money to come beg us for it, because we got you. Daddy Warbucks is here. That's literally what the beginning of the bill said to me. I was just like, oh, okay. And then the end's like, and then you write this thing and you ask, and the Bureau can decide whether or not you're worthy of said monies. And, they can make whatever standards they want, and they can create whatever rules they want. Like, the next, page of the bill is like, and we do what we want.
Right, and we do what we want.
We do what we want. We know the war on drugs was racist. We know this was a problem. Right. Literally, they put it on paper, and then they're like, but we're going to do what we want anyways. We got a bunch of money, and y'all have till 2019 of September to ask for it. Otherwise, we out, because apparently now we've paid our way. Yeah. Like, we've apologized. You've got it. Like, literally, it's some fucking...
Well, I think it could be simple, right? It could be, how long was the war on drugs?
Right.
Right? How much money and resources was dedicated to the war on drugs. Right?
Can you quantify that, you think?
You can. It's very easily quantified. You can look at the DA, the state
What about an
spending.
estimate? Put a number on it. What do you think?
It's got to be in the trillions.
Trillions, right?
But at the end of the day, I'm not even asking for all of it. Just take some of that, right, and allocate it to social equity.
You don't have to go super deep into the counting.
Yeah, and that's all I'm saying. It's like, to me, you've got a baseline. If you put all those resources into the war on drugs, you put all this money.
We want 10%.
Right? 10% of it should be said, hey, let's allocate 10% of this to getting social equity right.
Yeah.
And a lot of things will change.
I absolutely agree. I do not disagree. Because when you put your money where your mouth is for the government, it really changes things.
That's right.
It really changes.
And we're looking at, I always tell people, I'm looking at, we're in a different time and a different space, no doubt. But, some people may use the word reparations. I would say, hey, reparations almost say equal exchange. I'm not expecting you to give us an equal exchange. Let's be fair.
Right.
Let's just give.
Like, I'm not ignorant. I realize that's not going to happen. So let me ask for something more feasible.
More feasible. 10% would still blow it out the water.
10%, right? Yeah.
And we'd be able to take that financially, economically, in so many ways, utilize that to propel us so much further. And that would be more equitable than what is out there now.
And in general, if we looked and quantified those numbers and provided just an equity program for business owners in general, not just cannabis, not just the war on drugs, because while cannabis has been an issue and drugs have been an issue,
the entire community
has been impacted. It's not just a drug issue. However, we do have a place right now where weed's one of the most interesting topics that's like moving forward. So we're trying real hard to like let's bring those together as much as possible the entire time, because we're not losing momentum on weed because it's making people money.
It's making people a lot
So
of money.
with that said, everybody who's a part of this, remember the necks and the backs that we've basically walked across to get where we are, and the amount of people of color who have been completely taken down by cannabis as the reason why they're spending, life in jail in some situations.
And still can't participate in cities because they have a felony.
And still can't
how does that make
participate.
sense?
Absolutely. So, more than anything, I want to say this is a greater issue, but right now we have an opportunity to use cannabis to really propel this in California, which is the 5th or 6th largest economy in the world. So let's address this. Let's use weed and not lose traction on the importance of equity and the importance of giving back. Like, this is just a vessel. Weed's going to happen with or without this, but this needs to come with it the whole fucking way.
Totally agree.
The whole way. Like, if at any point weed exists without an equity movement and everybody's not fucking completely equal, we failed as potheads.
That's right.
We all failed as stoners. We have failed as people who love this plant and love to give back to the earth and society and people as a whole. We have failed because until we are all equal, especially in America, with the way weed has actually been used to oppress Black people over the entire existence. I mean, from the jazz era on, which, without weed and Black people, our music would be terrible in America. Like, we wouldn't have anything. So let's give back, and not, cannabis can't have an existence without equity ever until we're all equal. And I promise, as long as I stand on a cannabis platform, that I will keep this as a part of the movement moving forward. I promise that.
Thank you.
Yes. So thank you so much, Bryant, for coming out. We really appreciate it. And I'd like to have you on a show coming up. We're not done with this issue. This is, our whole show is based off of making a difference. And this is something that, like I said, is going to be a part of cannabis indefinitely. And I want to bring this to light, and I want to be able to, dig in a little deeper, maybe in Los Angeles and some of the up and coming cities with new equity programs. We want to bring exposure to them. We want people to get out, local jurisdiction, show up to your council. You can make a difference, right?
You can make a difference. Yes.
Like you have had an impact on Los Angeles, have you not?
I hope. I like to think so.
So. Don't be modest. So. You know that there are pieces in the regulations that you stood there and said, no, we won't take this, or yes, this has to happen.
Right.
And they changed because of you, or they were addressed because of you.
That's right.
At a local level. Los Angeles being the largest economy in the state of California, which is the 5th largest economy in the world, Bryant Mitchell made a difference.
We all need to.
Yeah, exactly. So with that, I am going to go ahead and take another break for one of our sponsors so that we can make sure to keep the lights on. And I want to make sure that we have not gotten enough of this topic. So thank you so much for coming out, Bryant.
Thank you, Nichole. And
such a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Founded by former NFL All-Pro Kyle Turley, NeuroXPF is a sports supplement company specializing in the medicinal benefits of cannabinoids. NeuroXPF makes and sells a full line of high-quality, certified organic, hemp-derived CBD products. All NeuroXPF products are THC-free. They use a special CO2 extracting process to isolate the CBD, working hard to preserve the terpenes in order to modulate the effects of their hemp-derived CBD. This adds that little extra punch to NeuroXPF products so they taste better and provide some beneficial qualities. To learn more about and purchase the NeuroXPF's products, please visit their website at neuroxpf.com. For more information about their current investment opportunity, please visit the Razzle Investment Marketplace at razzle.com.
Welcome back, and thanks again for watching another episode of Sensible Dissent, where a couple of crazy tricks try to make a difference without losing our shit. And now for my favorite segment of every episode, where we award this week's Golden Cock. This week's Golden Cock goes out to everyone who litigated against the City of Los Angeles' social equity program, which ultimately led to the opening of the program for another additional 100 applicants. While I still think the program is not yet where it needs to be, I think 100 more dispensaries are needed to satiate the demand for cannabis that Los Angeles has. We got 4 million people in the city, 11 million people in the county, and only 235 dispensaries? That's not enough pot for the people. Let's keep fighting and do it with a little golden cock. And now it's time for our saddest but probably most important portion of every episode, where we shed light on somebody who's currently incarcerated for cannabis in the United States. Today's prisoner that we are going to shed light on is Corvain Cooper. And on June 18th, 2014, Corvain Cooper was convicted in the United States District Court of North Carolina in Charlotte for the crime of conspiracy to distribute and possession with the intent to distribute marijuana and sentenced to life without possibility of parole. This was a nonviolent crime. Despite the former attorney Eric Holder's promise not to seek life sentences for nonviolent drug offenders, the United States attorney sought and obtained a life sentence under federal three strikes law. Corvain Cooper's 2 prior felonies that were his first 2 strikes were convictions in California for possession of marijuana, and one of the others was the possession of codeine cough syrup without a prescription. When he was sent to prison for the rest of his life for selling marijuana, Corvain Cooper was 34 years old, a father of 2 young daughters, ages 4 and 8, a fiancé, a son, a friend, and a small business owner selling clothing and footwear. Corvain appealed his conviction and sentence, arguing that his sentence of life imprisonment without parole for a nonviolent drug offense as cruel and unusual punishment. The United States Courts of Appeals in the Fourth Circuit upheld this injustice, and the Supreme Court declined his hearing of the case. After the direct appeals concluded, the state of California enacted Prop 47 and Prop 64, all as a part of legislation to draw reforms after California legalized marijuana. Both laws permitted people like Corvain Cooper to apply to the courts to vacate their marijuana or drug felony convictions and replace them with misdemeanor convictions. Corvain successfully applied, and both of his felony convictions were thrown out. Congratulations, Corvain. Both of his 2 strikes were vacated, meaning that Corvain Cooper was no longer eligible for the 3 strikes law. His lawyer filed a petition pursuant to 28 U.S.C. 2255 in the federal courts, challenging his life sentence under the 3 strikes law, saying since 2 of those strikes were no longer felonies, he should not have received a life sentence. The federal courts have denied their challenge. This case is once again before the United States Supreme Court, and if the court allows the sentence to stand, this man will never see his family again. In 2016, they submitted an application for clemency with President Barack Obama, asking him to commute the grossly unjust sentence of life imprisonment for a nonviolent drug offense. Unfortunately, before he left office, President Obama denied the clemency petition. So now we're asking for everybody to please go to change.org, the link that we have in the description, and please sign the petition to get Corvain's clemency. We don't need another person spending time in jail for a plant, especially life in prison, under the 3 strikes law, which was ridiculous at best, so that somebody could be sentenced and put away because they were selling a plant that people are now considering essential. Cannabis is essential, and Corvain is in prison. Let's talk about that.
And now it's time to do a card reading from some cards that I personally use every day, the Queen of Stones, Power and Magic Goddess cards. So let's see what our spirit guides have for us today. Ooh. Be carefree with your magic and careful with your power. Each day you wake up is another chance to get it right. A well-balanced life includes taking no fucks and giving no shits, which is one of my favorite cards.
That part.
And lastly, believe in your fucking self.
Thank you again, Sarah, for such an amazing reading from the Queen of Stones herself. I absolutely love those cards. And thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Sensible Dissent, powered by Razzle Cannabis Broadcasting Network, WCBN. And remember, well-behaved women rarely make history.
And remember, today in 2020, more than 2 million Americans in impoverished communities across the nation do not have access to basic clean water or sanitation services.
We can all be a part of the change. Have a good night.